Spoken, a memoir sprinkled with a little quadriplegia. Book dedication. I dedicate this book to the often mistakenly overlooked and possibly invisible earthlings, human and non-human, who experience either or all of the following: inequality, discrimination, exploitation, abuse, sexual and physical, death, murder, slaughter. Disclosure. There may be things I and others have done in the past which are potentially incriminating and or unethical. There may also be individuals in my life who chose to be more private about their past, especially in relation to me. As a deliberate result, I may have chosen to leave out identifying individual visual traits, use only first names, and or use fictitious names, and alter environments. This is not a personal attempt to cloud my transparency or avoid personal responsibility, but rather protect the identity of individuals. Chapter 1. Bobby Jr., The Early Years. According to hospital papers, I am born on Saturday, May 24th, 1975, at Valley County Hospital in Ord, Nebraska, which is 43 miles from where my parents are living in Spalding, Nebraska. Ord has doctors my mother chose and a hospital to birth babies. Spalding does not. I am 20 inches long. The circumference of my head is 14 inches. My chest is 13¾ of an inch. I am leaving the hospital with my parents at 3:30 p.m. and arriving at a place called home at 4:10 p.m., according to the journal in my baby book. My entrance into this new life outside of my mom's womb is welcomed by my immediate family. My dad, Robert A Rieck Jr, is a mechanic and 24 years old. My mom, Sandra Sue Rieck, works doing nurse duties and is 20 years old. Both of my parents have already brought their first child into this world 4 years before me on August 18th, 1970, and named her Rhonda Marie Rieck. My mom writes in my baby book that I have quite a lot of blonde hair turning red within 1 week. I am eating very well and gain a lot in 3.5 weeks. First home in Spalding, Nebraska, and my illnesses. My first home and my parents' first owned home as a married couple is next to the mortuary and purchased from Kay Bassett, the widowed wife of my mother's first cousin, Bobby Bassett Jr. Kay sells this house to my parents for $2,000. My mom journals, within the first 4 months of my existence, I am experiencing quite a few colds, flu, and infections. On August 23rd, 1975, I experience a high fever of 104 degrees, so my mom gives me aspirin and a cool bath as directed by a doctor. The very next day, Dr. McIntyre diagnoses me with an ear infection and gives me a shot of penicillin in his office. As I am returning home from this doctor visit, my body temperature starts to go up. Right as my mom is going to give me a cool bath at home, I go into convulsions. I end up having to be driven fast to the nearest hospital in St. Paul, Nebraska, where I am hospitalized for 2 days as my mom stands by me. The hospital determines my convulsions were from a high fever and most likely I am allergic to penicillin. Some other things my mom and dad keep track of by journaling in my baby book are the following. Responds to sound and light at 4 years old. Laughs aloud at 6 weeks. Reacts to emotions at 6 weeks old. First words at 7.5 months. Bob, Dad, Mom, Rhonda. First sentence between 18 to 24 months is, I love you. Original sayings, oh God, and Pizza House. Walks at 9.5 months. Associate animals with sounds at 20 months. Repeat actions laughed at for attention, 1 year. Memorable birthdays early on. On May 24th, 1976, I received a tricycle on my first birthday and a blue tractor on my second birthday. The blue tractor is a large, mostly heavy metal tractor with large rear dually black rubber wheels and have white rims and a white canopy top over the driver's seat of the tractor. I am able to stick my hand through the open back of this canopy where I grab the steering wheel and control the front wheels. It is very likely I do receive more than one gift for my second birthday, but this is the only gift that resonates with me. Small town. My grandma, Ruby Louise Tierney, who raised my mom, is a short, 5'3", skinny, frail-looking lady. She has a darker skin tone, wears glasses, and has dark hair. She lives in a small house on a corner lot in Spalding, Nebraska. In 1978, my mom is pregnant, but also divorces my dad because of his relationship with alcohol and accused infidelity. The only mother my mom identifies as her mom is my grandmother Ruby, and she dies from what started as lung cancer and spread into bone cancer. My mom and us 3 kids moved into what was my grandma's house for a couple years. Approaching my 3rd year of life, my mom births me a brother named John on November 29th, 1978, whom I quickly treat as just someone for me to pick on. Indoors versus outdoors. Being toddler age, there are limited worlds, one being indoors and the other outdoors. Indoors seem restrictive, and I look for every opportunity to be freely roaming outdoors, of course, within the boundaries given by my mom. I associate indoors as times when I get into trouble and have to withstand some kind of punishment consisting of timeout, sitting in one spot for what seems like eternity, on a kitchen chair, or a limited spot on the living room couch. Indoors is the place of the punishment chambers to help correct bad behaviors. It is the place where you have to do things such as eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like a good boy at the table. It is the place to do the number 2, because kids, especially boys, can get away with doing the number 1 outdoors. It is a place where naps are mandatory and getting a good night's sleep is required. It has limited benefits such as cooling down in the hot summers or warming up in the cold winters. Finally, indoors is also a place to refuge when ill. Other than that, outdoors is my objective. That's where the world is. The outdoors is the world of discovery, experience, and imagination. There is a helicopter tree maple tree in the yard of Grandma's Ruby's house. I am fascinated and intrigued watching the helicopters fall from above, spinning fast but descending slow. They are eye animations. It is instinctively fun to catch as many helicopters as I can before their descent ends abruptly when hitting the ground. Of course, I love to throw them back into the air universe to fly again. My young curiosity has me studying these helicopters. There is the single-weighted seed pod with an extending arm forming a fan-like blade of about 1.5 inches. There are veins throughout the helicopter blade, and the different transcending transparency in the blade going away from the arc. I sometimes wound a helicopter to then analyze how it affects its flight. Reduce the width of the blade, surgically remove the single seed. If the surgery is compromised, there are plenty of subjects. There are simple pleasures when I grab a handful of helicopters from a nicely corralled pile formed by the wind and then toss this uncountable amount into the air to fight for flight space. These are free, memorable joys. Seasons always bring new and familiar discoveries like these. Another sibling and finding religion. My mom is attending AA meetings for herself and to understand alcoholism to perhaps make more sense to what has happened in her relationship with my dad. Newly divorced, she does form a relationship with a male individual also attending AA meetings. Even though this relationship is short-lived, she is taking birth control, and he reportedly says he is not able to have children. In the end, my mother gives birth to my little sister Renee on September 14th, 1979. My mom starts doing a Bible study with a Jehovah's Witnesses couple named Pep and Heidi while still living in Spalding. My mom is Catholic, but she is disappointed with her spiritual journey in this denomination because, in her words, it is less about the Bible and more about small-town gossip. Jehovah's Witnesses appeal to her because they use Scripture convincingly well. Being an active part of Jehovah's Witnesses involves our family attending 5 religious gatherings per week, 4 of which are in St. Edward, Nebraska, about 30 minutes away. The main purpose of these meetings is to learn to live a life in accordance with their beliefs of a man-made religion on earth guided by Jesus himself. To be perfectly fed all of life's truths, falsehoods, rights and wrongs, way to believe, way to live, and future prophecies certain to happen, proves to be a separation of our family from the rest of society. The cardboard box. During this time, and amidst our immersion into the Jehovah's Witnesses, my mom moves to Albion, Nebraska for a few months. My brother and I are always in a play and fight sequence repeatedly. We start off playing and somehow it turns into a competition or there is some disagreement on some issue, but always each of us wants to be more in control. As the older dominant brother, I am able to always win the physical fights, so even if he is able to win with reasoning, I can always recapture control physically. However, this day John and I are playing with a cardboard box, and he convinces me to posture down and curl up into a ball tight enough for this cardboard box to perfectly fit on top of me. In order for this to happen, I really have to fold my body down with my knees and shins to the ground, my butt pressed against my ankles, my stomach and chest pressed against my thighs and knees, and tuck my head down into my chest. My arms are bent at the elbow and tucked really tight against my body with just my forearms on the ground. With the box snugly in place over me, even to the point where the bottom side of the box is pressed snug against my back, my brother John demonstrates to me for the first time ever what it feels like to be powerless. All John does is get on top of the box. It isn't long before I am begging John to get off the box and let me out. The more I try to talk in panic, the more fear I have because of my limiting body position and how hot it is getting underneath the box. I don't know how long John has been on top of the box, but it seems way too long for me. I'm thinking if the roles were reversed, I'm going to stay on the box longer, but John eventually releases me from my dire situation. Not so good brother to Rhonda. I do not ever really play with my sister Rhonda for the reason that perhaps she is older than me. I don't believe she views me as a playmate. She does have a large red metal Tonka truck I love to play with by placing both of my hands on each side bed just behind the back of the truck's seating cabin and literally just drive the truck powered by my legs. I drive fast and carelessly. Lip gloss. My sister Rhonda starts going to Albion Public School, and while she is away, I sometimes find myself exploring her room, even though I know she does not support such an action. I am entitled because I want to, and consequences are not on my childish mind. I find a jumbo tube of strawberry lip gloss. Not your typical standard size tube, but one similar in construction and appearance, but at least 4 times as big. Of course, I have to take the lid off to smell it and put it on my lips, but I do not expect it to taste so good. I become totally tripped up with my sense of taste and eat the whole tube of strawberry lip gloss. Barbie dolls as snack. This is also the time, if I get a hold of Rhonda's Barbie dolls, I chew on their feet for some reason. The feet on these female Barbie dolls, from the tips of the toe to almost the heel, is just some rubbery plastic substance which has me wanting to chew on them. Of course, my teeth rip havoc on the feet, completely removing and exposing the wire construction of the leg ending at the heel. There is no wire construction in the foot part that I chew off. What about Bob, Dad? Living at this address with my mom, we see very little of our dad. At my young age, I don't even know if my dad lives in the same town as me. My world is only as big as the perimeters of my house, unless, of course, we go somewhere as a family. One evening, my dad shows up at our front door, and Mom tells us to get away from the front door and not let him in. My dad has been drinking, and he is insisting on coming in to see us kids. I am very excited to see my dad and want to open the door to visit with him. All 3 of us kids want to see and talk to him. Eventually, my mom allows him to come into our home. I speak to my dad and show him things, anything I can do to get his attention and retain it. These are competitive times between John, Rhonda, and I to see who is going to have the most interaction with Dad. Once I am able to get his attention, I have to quickly come up with something else to maintain it. I want to be as close to my dad as possible, even if it means asking him for a drink of his beer. I am always looking for compliments of approval or praise from him. I also want to keep him in our presence as long as we possibly can, because these moments are scarce, and I know in the end he is going to be sent out the door. At one point this evening, he helps coach me on how to tie my shoes. My dad is a very emotional drinker. He sits down on one of our dining room chairs and holds a can of beer in his right hand, frequently tearing between his drinks. I still am enjoying this visit, even though his agenda includes his attempt to get back into the family fold. His pleading conversation with my mom is almost secretly sewn in between his interactions with us kids. Eventually, my mother is very committed to not letting him back into our lives. Ord and the Musk Thistle. The fourth relocation of home is when my family moves to Ord, Nebraska for less than a year. During the summer, early fall, we have a garden on the side of the house and a large yard. I play in the yard a lot, many times without wearing any shoes, just barefoot. I soon learn the protective benefits of shoes when I am running barefoot in the green grass of my yard and plant my right foot in a robust, healthy musk thistle. The prickly leaves of this plant are very stern and not forgiving, causing some painful tissue damage to the bottom of my foot. From that point on, every time I see one of these enemy plants, I often make the time to destroy them. Jehovah's Witnesses and a free house. My family is still active with Jehovah's Witnesses, even while in Ord. We are attending all 5 religious meetings per week at the Ord Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Instead of the original St. Edward congregation, we are more familiar. My mom eventually is missing friendships she has established with members of the St. Edward congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Pep and Heidi, who are the first Jehovah's Witnesses couple to start a Bible study with my mom and get her active within the religion and its congregation, contact my mom to tell her they are going to leave the state of Nebraska to help other congressional branches of Jehovah's Witnesses. They own a house right next to the St. Edward Congregation Kingdom Hall and tell my mom she and her family can move into the house. The only thing my mom has to pay for is utilities. Otherwise, a completely rent-free home. My mom takes them up on the offer and we move to St. Edward, Nebraska. Being a Jehovah's Witness in a small town. I believe we moved to St. Edward during the spring or summer of my 6th birthday. The house we live in is a 2-story, 3-bedroom house. It is also almost catty-cornered with the St. Edward Public School. I try as long as I can to avoid having to go to public school. I am content with my small world of people and friends being my family and other Jehovah's Witnesses. I am fearful to go to a public school as the only Jehovah's Witness in a school filled with worldly people who are part of false religions. To save lives and have friends. By the time I am 6, my pleas to avoid school have expired, and it is time for me to go to a public school and be around a bunch of kids I not only do not personally know, but they don't have the promise of everlasting life like I do. I am taught to believe only Jehovah's Witnesses have God's favor and are going to live forever in a paradise on earth. I am allowed to be polite and interact with other students, for the purpose of lawful education, but am discouraged and warned of the dangers of fellowshipping with unbelieving students outside of school. Even at my young age, I take an initiative without anyone knowing. I go into my kindergarten classroom on the first day of school before other classmates arrive and do something in an attempt to save lives and have friends. I open up my backpack and start placing one Watchtower and one Awake magazine. These are magazines used to recruit people into faith, neatly on top of each and every desk in the classroom. Before most classmates can take possession of this valuable, life-saving information, my teacher says I'm not allowed to do this ever again, and I have to take back all of the magazines I put out. My teacher evidently calls my mom to notify her of my disapproving act and makes it clear it is unacceptable. I am later praised for my independent actions from the congregation of people at the Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Hall. This is my first noticeable experience of coming difficulties I am going to have involving my faith in a world of unbelievers. The Pledge of Allegiance. Every day of school starts with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Everyone is instructed to stand up, place their right hand over their heart, and look and face the United States flag mounted on the front wall of the classroom, which is called the teacher's wall, just on the outside of the large chalkboard. The classroom teacher then verbally guides all of the pupils in the room to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. This Pledge of Allegiance is against the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses because they only pledge allegiance to Jehovah God himself and to no other object, persons, or government. Identifying as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I am encouraged from spiritual leaders within the organization to abstain and politely protest, ideally by staying seated in my desk chair and giving no part of visual or voice participation in this daily ritual. The feeling of being visibly different from all of my peer classmates every day is extremely challenging and almost unbearable. It never seems to get easier as time passes as I repeatedly practice the protest. I believe there may have been more times when I stand up with the other students, but slightly turn away from facing the United States flag and feel like this whole process is a long time. While I am standing there listening to the united classroom of voices reciting this Pledge of Allegiance, I intentionally try not to make any eye contact with my other classroom peers for fear of possibly receiving a look of disapproval from them for my actions. By the end of it, I try once again to feel like I am an equal part of the classroom of peers and not a defiant oddball. Dealing with holidays. St. Edward Public School embraces and engages in holiday activities which are not centrally important to our education, but serves well for the unification of the community as a whole. The observance of holiday activities within the school system causes a separation of Jehovah's Witnesses students from everyone else. For example, if there is a Christmas play to be observed by all grade groups of the school, Jehovah's Witnesses students are brought to the principal's office until regular school education resumes. It is a tremendous amount of pressure for me to find the perfect timing to be able to communicate with my classroom teacher that it is against my religion to participate in a holiday activity without drawing attention to myself from other students who are close enough to possibly hear the conversation I want to be private. The seat layout for each of the homeroom classrooms I am in, depending on which grade I am in at the time, have the teacher's desk usually in the front of the classroom, slightly in a corner. There are usually a couple of students whose desks are still close enough to the teacher's desk that they may hear the conversation I want to keep private. There is also the anxiety of approaching the teacher's desk with the intent of informing, reminding the teacher of my spiritual beliefs, and hope when I'm at the desk there's not going to be another student waiting in line behind me to talk to the teacher about something, because then they can eavesdrop on my conversation. After I successfully have this conversation with my teacher, the next anxious event involves successfully removing me from the pagan holiday participation. If the holiday activity is going to be in a school gymnasium with all grade levels, then the separation can be less attention grabbing. In the sense, fewer of my peers notice me being separated from the others. This ideal and less attention grabbing situation looks like this. When it is time to go to the gymnasium, the classroom teacher instructs students to form a line on one side of the classroom by the classroom door. I intentionally try to be the very last person in line. With the teacher leading, we all exit the classroom and start heading to the gymnasium. On the way to the gymnasium, we walk past the offices of the school administration employees, and I simply break off from the back of the line and walk into these offices to sit and wait in the principal's office. At my young age, I began to learn how the greater differences an individual has in comparison to the majority of other students increases the likelihood of it being an opportunity for someone or several others to use as a means to make fun of these differences. So, by my efforts to not draw attention from my fellow peers of my major spiritual and religious differences, I can minimize being made fun of. However, with daily rituals, I feel I have to peacefully protest, like the Pledge of Allegiance, and the abundance of yearly observed holidays and individual peers' birthdays. Jehovah's Witnesses do not observe those. It is virtually impossible to hide my religious differences and blend in. In time, peers begin to make fun of me with the title of being called a jumping Jehovah. Valentine's Day Classroom Party. Sometimes there are classroom holiday observances which are high attention grabbing situations. I am in the second grade when my classroom teacher either decides to have or allow a Valentine's Day giving exchange. Since we are not collectively going somewhere else, I am noticeably removed from the classroom just prior to this event taking place. I sit in the principal's office waiting for it to pass and to be allowed back into the classroom after it is sterilized from things conflicting with my religious beliefs. After this short holiday-themed observance, I am noticeably brought back into the classroom. It is very uncomfortable to be this kind of center of attention. As I approach my desk, I realize this attention is going to be prolonged because on my desk are several Valentine's Day cards from many of my classroom peers. I do only what I truly feel is expected of me to do by Jehovah God through his message of his chosen people, Jehovah's Witnesses. I return each Valentine's Day card to the person who thoughtfully wants to include me in their Valentine's celebration. I tried to make it as quick as possible by telling each peer, "I'm sorry, but I'm not allowed to have this because it is against my religion." Fireworks. On or around the 4th of July, my dad drives the 10 miles from his house in Albion to ours in St. Edward. During this visit, he brings us kids a pretty good sized box of fireworks. I am super excited to have the opportunity for the first time ever to be lighting off some fireworks. After my dad leaves, my mom eventually makes the decision to ruin these fireworks by soaking them in water and then discarding them. I am so upset to come so close to actually seeing fireworks in my possession and then having them go through the disappointment of seeing them ruined underwater. Ironhide turned pacifist. Close to Christmas, when I am in 4th grade, my dad is allowed to give each one of us kids a gift before or after Christmas. My mom allows this kind of gifting as long as my dad does not refer to it as a Christmas gift and it is not wrapped in Christmas paper or have any association with Christmas. We kids know there is no such thing as Santa Claus, and we know the history of Christmas more accurately than many adults. My dad specifically asks each of us kids what kind of gift we want. I specifically tell my dad I wanted a Transformers Decepticon plane. At the same time, there were at least 4 different planes to choose from. When my dad delivers the gifts to us kids at our house in St. Edward, he purchased me a Transformers red van named Ironhide. I am a little disappointed I don't get a plane, but I am still very happy to receive an official Transformers. I follow the directions very well for putting all the decals on the van and the transform robot. I learned how to transform Ironhide from vehicle to robot form fairly quickly. I am so excited with my new toy. This is often something I show to visitors coming into our home. One such visitor is the elder of our congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses named Carl. I show Carl Ironhide as the bus and how he divides into 2 pieces, one being the robot Ironhide himself, and the back portion, top of the van, transforming into a battle platform with a spring-loaded rocket launcher equipped with 4 missiles. Ironhide himself has an awesome laser gun that snugly fits in either of his gripped hands. Carl is less than impressed and immediately starts a concerning conversation with me about Ironhide's intentions. I knew Ironhide is an Autobot, and Autobots are the good guys fighting against the evil Decepticons. Carl reminds me of being one of Jehovah God's chosen people, and it is against God for me to take up arms against anybody. It is also against God for me to support any movement or individual who chooses weaponry designed to hurt or kill opposition. Carl uses focused reasoning and my agreed responses to ultimately disarm Ironhide by having me throw away all of his weaponry. I didn't really want to do it because every last bit of Ironhide has a sentimental value, being from my dad. I immediately feel the regret of showing Ironhide to Carl, but it seems my responses to his questions only support turning Ironhide into a pacifist. Chosen by God. I want Jehovah to really guide me through my life, So I develop a close personal relationship with him by praying to him at least once a day. I begin to pray he uses me as an instrument similar to how he used individual people in the Bible. I want to be a story bringing Jehovah God praise like other Bible stories of David and Goliath, Moses, Samson, Job, etc. I often pray he gives me some kind of superhuman ability, even if it means knowing where someone is going to be facing danger. So, with Jehovah's granted powers, I can victoriously save this individual. I want Jehovah God to be proud of me, but this does not mean I personally choose to follow the Jehovah's Witnesses' religious guidelines all of the time either. I start to learn how to accommodate my desires and wants and still somehow avoid guilt that I may be doing something displeasing to Jehovah. Questioning Jehovah's Witnesses' belief. I asked my mom why Jehovah's Witnesses, as an organization, insist the boys and men, members of the congregation, have short hair, since Jesus Christ most likely had long hair. I want Jehovah's Witnesses to get rid of this rule if it is not found in the Bible. My mom cannot provide an answer, so she calls Carl Hager, who is the congregation's residing elder. Carl comes over and he too is not able to provide me with an answer I understand to be correct. Instead, he excuses Jehovah's Witnesses for being sinfully human and not perfect. He also tells me there are times Jehovah's Witnesses do notice their errors and make corrections, but for right now, what is most important is to follow the current teachings. I still am not satisfied, so Carl asks me, "Do you love your mom?" "Yes," I quickly respond. "Do you believe she loves and cares for you and what she does is best for you?" Carl asks. "Yes," I quickly respond. Carl then talks about how my mom chooses to follow the truths, teachings, and the rules of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and as a good member of the family, I should support her. I agree with this reasoning, but still hopeful this is something Jehovah's Witnesses will change someday. Guilt-free crime. In St. Edward, I go into a town's only grocery store, which is a small IGA. There are these fishing poles I am looking at and wanting to buy one, but the sticker prices are too much for my mom. This is before the active use of UPC barcodes, and everything has an individual small sticker with the price. I decide to see if I can successfully swap the price stickers by taking a lower price from some batteries and place the sticker on one of the fishing poles that I want. I then ask my mom if this particular fishing pole is in her price range, and it happens to be. Since my mom is convinced of this price, now it is set to see if the cashier will ring up this nice fishing pole at its reduced price. I play pretty cool through line, and they probably do not suspect a young criminal swapping price tags. It works. Sticky fingers gone wrong. I go into a gas station convenience store with my mom and take it upon myself to steal a single package of fishing hooks. I find it pretty easy to steal small things and not get caught. However, shortly after my mom finds out I have stolen these fishing hooks, she tells me I have to go back with her to the convenience store to confess my wrongdoing. I do not want to do this, and I am embarrassed. I walk up to the convenience store counter, and tell the person without directly looking in their eyes, I stole these fishing hooks from here. I end it with, I'm sorry. My mom stands close behind me, making sure I'm fessing up. The cashier attendant says, You know, normally we have to call the police to come in here when someone steals from us. You wouldn't want us to call the police, would you? No, I respond. Well, since you brought these back and you are sorry for what you did, we will not call the police, okay? Yes, sir, thank you, I say in relief. Regina and Shirley. My first experience of kissing is taught to me by two girls who are also Jehovah's Witnesses, Regina and Shirley. Regina is a Mexican American who is super cute, with long hair and a slender figure. She is mostly very reserved and quiet. Her family consists of her mom and dad, a younger sister about my brother's age, and an infant sister. Regina teaches me first, and her kisses are heavy, fast, making out French kissing with tongues. I follow and mimic her lead. She consistently kisses with this serious passion every time. Shirley is a cute Caucasian girl with shorter brown hair who is much more outspoken and communicates a lot. Her family consists of her mom and dad, an older brother whom I enjoy playing with, and an older sister who is my older sister's age. Shirley instigates kissing when she gets me to play a game of house with her in an upstairs bedroom closet of her house. I follow her lead, as I am the husband and she is the wife. We role-play adult conversations on the closet floor in some blankets and French kiss. I really don't know what having a girlfriend is, other than I enjoy spending time with each of these girls separately. I also kiss both these girls at different times outside of the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. During each of these times, we are in the tall evergreen bushes in front of the Kingdom Hall making out. They both begin to know I am spending time with each of them, and they eventually start asking me questions such as, Do you love me more than? And are we going to be together? This is when lying to make the other person content or feel good starts to become what I think is the easier option. The reality is, I really do enjoy being around each of these girls. Regardless of what girl I am with at a particular time, our encountered experiences are done in secrecy to all others, especially adults. My mom isn't having conversations with me about being attracted to someone else and looking to engage in natural expressions of this by means of physical contact and kissing. So the lack of these conversations has me thinking my mom and the girl's parents will not approve of us kissing each other. Immediate environment conformity. This is also a time in my life when I pick up on cues from adults as to what is considered normal and complete. Normal as far as what others expect or automatically assume, and complete as meaning not missing any elements. Cues from adults, such as being exclusively with someone of the opposite sex, with implied comments such as, Do you know a cute girl? Do you have a girlfriend? You're going to make a good husband, dad, when you grow up, etc. I notice most of these comments coming from unbelieving family members, not Jehovah's Witnesses, such as my dad, grandma, and others. My immediate environment, whether it is unbelievers or God's chosen people, Jehovah's Witnesses, are pressure supportive of being in a complete relationships. What I mean by complete relationships is man and woman, even though I am living in a single parent family. My family is looked at as incomplete because there is not an active dad involved, even though when or if my dad tries to be the best dad he knows how to be, he is still an unbeliever and is not to be trusted because he is on Satan's side. Pressuring Valerie for a kiss. Upstairs in my mom's bedroom, I find myself alone with my big sister's friend Valerie. I ask her for a kiss as I am already in the process of bridging the intimate distance of proxemics. She surprisingly says no and withdraws from my physical advancement by intentionally distancing herself from me by getting behind a 10-inch in diameter stove piping going straight up from the floor to the ceiling in my mom's bedroom. This spot is located by the doorway and is slightly tucked a bit in the corner of her room. Even with this physical barrier between us, I still keep asking her for a kiss as I am moving around this pipe towards her. She keeps repeating no while continually moving the opposite direction, maintaining a level of distance between us. As we go full circle around this piping, she has had enough with me and finds the perfect time to quickly exit the room, rush downstairs, and tell my mom of my indecent behaviors. My worldly neighbor, Jeanette. Behind my house, on the same block, I engage in a friendly relationship with a girl named Jeanette Johnson. Our backyards connect with each other at the boundary corner tip. The right-hand corner of her property line touches the left-hand corner of my property line. Jeanette is a blue-eyed, long brown-haired girl who is also a classmate. We speak to each other in a friendly manner and meet and or see each other from our backyards. She knows I am a Jehovah's Witness and I am not supposed to be associating with her, but we both try to get away with what we can to have some connection. Jeanette has a swing set and a tree I like to climb in the corner of our yard boundaries. Often, this is how I get away with talking to her without my mom immediately finding out. My mom can be in the house doing the responsibilities of two parents while I sneak over to Jeanette's backyard, climb into the tree, look down, and talk to her. If my mom comes outside looking for me because it feels like her duties are to keep me pure from the influence of worldly kids, I stay hidden from her in the tree. There are times she locates me in the tree, but I deny any association with Jeanette. I report to my mom I enjoy climbing the tree because it is the closest climbable tree near our house. What I report is true as far as the tree. The lying part is about not associating or playing with Jeanette. So this rule of not being able to play with her prevents me from choosing to venture deep into her yard. I cross over only a couple feet just in case I hear my mom coming to check on me because then I scamper back as if I am playing in my backyard. When my mom highly suspects or does catch me associating with Jeanette, she takes me back into the house for me to listen to the worldly person lecture. What happens when you place a bad rotten apple next to a good apple? Does the good apple make the bad rotting apple good again? No, it does not. The bad rotting apple makes the good apple begin to rot. That is a teaching from Jehovah's Witnesses, as I remember. I believe my mom is telling me the truth. I just find it extremely difficult and embarrassing to tell Jeanette why I can't play with her because she is a rotting apple, when after all, I desperately want to simply play with her.